Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel.
So now it's time to do our stepper motor for our x-axis. Excuse me, our z-axis. And that's going to be these two flathead screws. They are MP4 by 18s. And that's why you want those two holes down low over here. Forgive me if I didn't mention that. And they also do not show you that in the instructions on the first page, so make note. Let's see. This is our jack screw. And now, check this bolt here to make sure that it is tight, just in case. Should be fine, and it is. Do not try to adjust this downward. Keep this space here. You don't want that protruding up, and you don't want this jack screw to drop down below this line, or this cut. So, now I didn't tighten that, I just got it in place, because you want to make sure you have both of these in and aligned. And we're going to want to make sure that our jack screw is properly positioned. Sometimes it's nice to have some extra tools. That's a 2.5 millimeter. Sorry, it's hard to see around the corner here. Okay, now let me see. One thing you can do is take, this is these things come with some printer filaments. Just slide this in. A piece of cardstock will do fine. And what I'm doing is just making sure that the jack screw isn't gonna go down too far into this the hole here. And what we want to do is make sure that this is aligned here in between these two grooves, that it's not off to one side or the other, and it's not. So we can do a finish tighten on these. There we go. Now, remember, this is fairly thin aluminum here at this section because there's a hole in the middle. So be very careful when you tighten these two, because you can definitely strip those quite easily. So, that's done. And just to make this as easy as possible on you guys, I am trying to follow the instructions step by step. I've assembled more than one of these, and I've certainly taken my original apart many times, but I'm trying to do this for your benefit so that you'll be going through the instructions in the same way that I'm going through this process. And they have a terrible habit of kind of skipping steps in here, but yeah, it is what it is. The instructions are fairly decent. So you want to make sure you're choosing the correct one of these two. And we want this one that has these extra holes here. This one just has 4 equally spaced holes. That's going to be our cap. We can set that out of the way for now. We need this one. It's got certain cutaways, like the way this one is cut away here and here, to allow something to pass through here and provide clearance. And the way that is going to be positioned, let's get our first piece here. And okay, so let me spin this around here. Okay, so front. And we want our trolley here is going to ride up and down here. And so this piece needs to, here we go. Sorry, I had it backwards. This bolt here, the head of that bolt is going to go into this cutaway. So the left-hand side of this bar is the side with 2 holes, and then the larger hole with the cutaway. So that can bolt right on like this. Okay? So that is going to take the 4x16s. A pair of them. And here we have a pack with some 4x16s. Now, I don't know why we have 5. I don't know if there's going to be a use for this. Some kits for hardware, like if you've bought IKEA furniture before, and or some stuff that comes out of the Orient, you'll get extra pieces of hardware. They throw in an extra bolt or two because if you lose it or damage it, it's a lot easier to have an extra 1 or 2 in the pack versus you having to contact them and have them ship you a new screw. So now you can't reach the head. These heads are going to go through here. You reach them with the Allen wrench through these holes here. So go ahead and slide 2 of them through. A little hard to do if you've got big fingers. So there we go. I've got them both in. So actually it's probably easy to do it like this. You know, these, yep, that's the right size. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead . See, the reason I'm putting this on the hotbed here is that the stepper motor is further down than this bar is. So by doing it this way, it allows me to get these started a little easier. Now, this is also something we don't want to completely tighten down. And that also will have an explanation, as all of this does. So, as I mentioned, we have a concentric standoff here, which we need to adjust. So, this is a little hard for me to show on camera. Let me try repositioning this. Okay, so I'm going to lower this onto the aluminum extrusion here while I've got my finger on the jack screw. And I've got the jack screw now lined up with this brass fitting, and I'm going to reach down here and I'm turning the connector at the down on the motor down here, and that lets me rotate the jack screw more easily. And you know what? I'm going to, that's pretty good. I'll worry about that later. I'm going to definitely lube up the jack screw a bit, but that's something I can worry about in a bit. And that's impossible to do that way. So what I wanted to do was to adjust this and tighten these bolts while making sure this is perpendicular, because this needs to be perpendicular. I think the best way to do that is going to be to, let's first make sure this, okay, this is tight. Well, it's really not, and it's not moving. So that may not need to be adjusted. I'm going to test something. Okay, I'm going to roll it down this extrusion and see if, yeah, that does not require adjustment. These wheels are perfectly spaced. As you can see, it moves up and down easy, but there's no moving around. So what I want to do now, and I can even do it here because it doesn't matter. It's going to be perpendicular either way. So what I want to do, I'm in need of a bubble gauge or a level. Okay, so now I have these tight enough so that this arm will stay in position if I adjust it. So I'm going to level this out with my bubble gauge. And when it's perpendicular, I'm going to gently raise it while not touching the bar. Now I'm going to tighten those screws, and then I'll measure it again and make sure that nothing moved during the tightening process. But that seems like a good way to make sure that is horizontal, because if this is at an angle, your hot end is going to move up and down if it was angled like this. So even a slight angle, when you're talking the fractions of a millimeter that this thing needs to be adjusted to, you don't want that. So I'm just going to go ahead and validate that on here. It seems we're a little bit off. So I'm going to pull it, loosen it, adjust it slightly, and do it again. Because, see, that's the advantage of having a second jack screw, is that the 2 jack screws will make sure this is completely horizontal. Having only 1 jack screw, you don't get that redundancy and accuracy. And you have to make sure that this is properly done on its own. Now, you're going to have a second set of wheels over here, a track, but that doesn't guarantee that this is going to be held level. So, even if you got to do this a couple times, it's better to be sure. Let's test it high. And low. And as you can see, it's a little bit off. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust it again. It doesn't look like I made any change at all. Okay, one more time. Oh, looks good. Got the bubble in the center. So, they want me to put the Bowden tube end here now. I'm going to wait. I'm going to do the Bowden tube all at one time. And it's time to get out our belt. Because of this thing has kind of a curve to it because it's coiled. Get that around for you guys. Okay. See how it's kind of wants to roll? Set it through upside down, in other words, teeth up, and then flip it around. And then you can slide the other end through. So again, going a little out of step here, take this apart. Now, they gave us one of the screws that we need. It's in the bag. It actually got inside here. Now that slides through nice and easy. Just put this on loose to start. And actually we're gonna wanna, it's easier to do it this way. Okay, just have that stuff handy. And now we need this piece here. And just like the other one, we've got a cutaway. And that's going to be for this bolt here. So what we want to do, okay, just to help you orient, the steep side angle here with the flat, that's up, okay? Now I need to tighten this, and then we need to go into the adjustment on that. Let me just get this back to starting point. Okay, so just like this one, we want to make sure that this piece here doesn't have any wiggle to it. So that's a little tight. Okay, nice and smooth. Okay, nice smooth action. So now we need to attach our belt tightener. Wait a minute. Okay. We need to put on our trolley first. So this is probably easier to just lift this right on out. Make sure this doesn't have twists in it. And bring the cable over the bar. Actually, yeah, like that. And that is already adjusted well enough for us. I'm going to run this. Well, that's not going to do it either. Okay. Run this over and under like that. Slide the hot end over top. Hopefully you can see clearly what I'm doing. So now I've gotten the belt in place. And I go ahead and put the first of the 2 screws in here. Now, there's a little trick on these. We've got 2 screws here that are going to attach our adjuster. There's a screw that goes in from this side. That's one of these. That has a washer on it, little lock washer, and then there's our flat end. These are too long between the 2 of them. They bump into each other in the middle. So what we need is a 1mm spacer that we can put onto this one. So a second washer will provide enough distance. And we want to put our belt through here. Make sure that the hole that's countersunk faces towards you, towards the front. There we go. There's a correct way to put that roller in. If it doesn't fit, flip it up, slide it back in. Okay, I'll do the flathead in just a moment. Now I can slide the belt into here, into this groove. There we go. Make sure that they are both all the way in so that the belt goes down the track. Check the belt. Make sure you don't have any twists in it. And now we can go ahead and lower this assembly into place. Okay. And now I can tighten this countersunk flathead screw. Don't over tighten because it's plastic. You don't want to split the plastic. I can tighten this one. Okay. Okay, everything is moving freely. Put on their belt tensioner. Not gonna make it too tight. Just okay. So we are really getting near the home stretch. Let's get out this little pack of M5 by 25s. And again, they give us an extra, just like on the ones below. And again, no need to go crazy tightening these. They have little lock washers, so they're not going to come loose on you. Okay, in this bag we have these little plastic squares. They're little end pieces for these right here, so you don't have a sharp edge that you might catch yourself on. Those just snap into place. Just press them in. Okay, now it's time for some wiring. I'll do Bowden tubing in a minute. we have down here, we have two Z wires, one small connector, one large. The large connector goes to our stepper motor, and it's an idiot-proof connection, reasonably. It's keyed, so just press it in, make sure it's snug. Then we have the small one goes into our stop switch. Go ahead and just plug that in from below, and we'll get to adjusting that in a little bit. Okay. Now we have these, and so all three of these connectors are going to go over here. We have this X stop, and then we have two motor connectors. So our E connector is going to be this one here, and our X motor and X stop are going to go here. So you may need to split this a little further just to make sure things reach where they need to go. And this one plugs in here. Okay, and in here is the plug for our stop switch. And what that does is when this moves all the way over, it hits the stop switch right here. And that tells the motor that it's hit the end of its range of motion and it stops. The other end is done programmatically. You only, just like the jack screw, you only need one end with a stop. The other end is done through software. So to get that plugged in, a pair of needle nose pliers is just the ticket. And push it in with the tip of the screw of the needle nose pliers to make sure that it's fully seated, and you're set. Okay. So normally our Bowden tube would go in here like so. Again, we're going to be getting rid of this white Bowden tubing and going to another one. The wiring is definitely improved on this kit. The way it's laid out, the way it's run, there's no chance of it catching anywhere. The older one had a little bit of an issue, but there were simple fixes made for that people had set up 3D prints for. So now we've got our program board, and that is easily done. These little connectors are going to go just the way they did on our stop switch on the other side. Line them up so that they're going to go into the extrusion. So now we plug this in here. Again, idiot-proof connection. Just press that in. And this keys in and snaps into place. So, one other thing we should check right now before we do anything with our power, there is a red switch back here. As you can see, it's set for 230, and I'm in the United States. I need that set to 115. And as you can see, our power for our standard PC type computer 3-prong cord is back here. You can peel off that little screen protector. And now we have these M5x8s. And we have a pair of extrusion nuts. This is our roller for our spools of filament. I've used a variety of different types. I've had it above, I've had it on the side, and I'm fine with it being up top. Never had any problems. Pretty much any position you want to put it in. As long as you're making sure that the cable goes in smoothly or the filament goes in smoothly, you're just fine. So I'm going to set this up stock for now. And I have a enclosure for doing things like ABS and such. Also, it'll make things a little quieter. So I will be switching over to that. And when I do, I'll be using a different roller system. But I will cover all that in future videos. Show you what I'm building. So there we go. Now if you lose these clips or if they get damaged or become weak, you can always use those black binder clips. They work just fine. Oh, haven't done, what am I doing? I'm leaving out the Bowden tubing. So to remove the cover of the hot end, we have a screw back here. And you want to tip this to the side. There's a little clip and there's a hole that locks into. You just kind of want to ease this out. There we go. You see this? There's a clip, and a pin. So you want to kind of turn it to the side and kind of jiggle it until you free both of these. Be careful, you don't want to break those off. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim these zip ties. Now, if you were doing this without upgrading this, just follow the directions. One of the things you should do is adjust the hot end here, and I'll talk about that. You're basically going to be doing the same thing, just with the white hose. Let's throw away this plastic here. Now they've given us two different sizes. And what these do, as you can see, this moves in and out, and it's sprung. There are teeth on the bottom of this plastic piece, and they kind of grab onto the hose and pinch it when this comes up, and they hold it. And then to make sure it stays, you take one of these blue clips and slide it in there like that. And that keeps it from being able to drop back down and release the hose, because you don't want that to happen. So I'm going to start by putting one of these in here. And let's see if this wrench is the right size. It is. Good. Now, you should be able to see the marks where that plastic end latched into this tubing and bit in. It's actually, as you can see, it actually makes penetration. Not all the way through, but at least into the surface material. Now, important things. The number one most important thing about your 3D printer is that you don't get melted plastic inside the hot end. Once it starts getting gummed up with melted plastic, it's almost impossible to completely clean it out. I've done many things, from pipe cleaners, heating this up really, really hot to try to melt it away, and then, more pipe cleaners and, twisted up paper towel, all kinds of stuff. And it'll work for a while, but the problem comes back. What you want to do is you're trying to get a completely flat surface here, and that needs to be pressed against the base of the hot end. Now, the base of the hot end is one of these little brass tips, and the size of the tip is relative to the type of filament you're using, the thickness of the filament, the hot end, and your print settings. Ender 3s generally work on a 0.4 or 0.04. Very small hole in the tip there. But this relationship is what's important, that this hose is pressed against this brass fitting, and it's not like there's a depression for this to fit into. It's just a flat surface to a flat surface. So it needs to be tight. Now, one of the ways to do that is to, I'm just going to, I'm just holding this as an example. The hose is going to come down inside below this fitting. It's going to come down further than that even. And it's got to press up against here. Now, what you can do is set this in, tighten it down, mark it, by scoring it with a tool or using a Sharpie, something like that. Not the white thing, because that rotates freely on the metal. Back it off, in other words, loosening it one turn, slide your Bowden hose all the way down, lock it in place with one of the blue clips, and then re-tighten it that full turn so it's tight. That one turn will, because remember, this clamp is holding the hose, so it's going to push that hose down a little bit further, and it's going to press it hard against this brass fitting here, and that's going to give you your seal. So basically what I'm going to do now is just measure off the original. And now I'm going to basically choose what I think is the flattest of the two ends. I'm going to flex this out straight a little bit. Press down on the black end, slide this down, pull back up, slide in the retainer clip, and now tighten this back down. Now, that's a little long in my opinion. I've never needed that much Bowden tubing. I'm going to cut that short. I think that ought to do fine. Now this end, it's not mission critical that it be super flat. Thought I had another one of those blue clips on the loose, but I could be wrong. So I'll just use this one. May not even need it. That looks fairly locked. Oh, there we go. So now the wheel can be pressed in place. Things I should just show you. You have an adjustment screw right here on the side. That's going to help adjust how tight this clamp is right here. Okay, things that can make your prints go badly. Your filament is going to go in here. It goes in between the stepper motor wheel here. It's a serrated wheel. And then there's like a bearing with a groove in it. Kind of like a bicycle wheel with the tire taken off it. And so this arm here controls that bearing wheel, and that presses the filament against this gear. So when you're inserting your filament, you want to kind of pull this in a little bit and slide your filament through, and it goes into the hole over here on this side. It enters the Bowden tube, and you keep, funneling it through here until it gets down to your hot end. Okay. There is another type of extruder. It's called a dual gear extruder, and I'm going to be using one of those in a future video as well. I'm going to be experimenting with that on the old Ender, and if it works well, I'm going to get one for this. They're about $20. And the way that works is, instead of having one serrated gear, it's got a pair of serrated gears that work together. They are both driven. This silver bearing wheel here is not driven by a motor. Only the brass one is. So with this setup, you have two wheels that are driven, that are pushing it from both sides. If your printer tip starts getting a little clogged, this system here can have a hard time feeding the filament, and it'll back up, and that can cause your prints to have anomalies. So ideally, I would like to remove this setup right here, and using either a longer piece of Bowden tube and attach that new extruder somewhere else on the machine. It could be here, it could be in a direct feed setup, right above the hot end, or it could be down here on the frame with a long piece of Bowden tube. Exactly where it is isn't as important as to the benefits it gives. So this is what you use to help feed your filament in. So now to put this back on, be very careful that you're not damaging these wires here. None of them have come loose. And that has already come loose, but that'll go right back in. Should. Let me tighten that screw down a little bit. Yeah, that's strange that was loose. Okay. So now we can wiggle this thing back into place. Now they've really made that difficult to do from the last model. Now remember, you're screwing into plastic here, so don't over tighten it, just make it snug. Okay, so we are done. Other than plugging it in, there's also a switch on the back here, a power switch right next to where the cord plugs in. So we got a long ways to go yet. This was the easy part. I need to go ahead and adjust that. This is our bump stop. If you recall, we want that to be, there's a little piece that hits the extrusion. Move it up from that, oh, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. It's better to be safe than sorry. Okay. Just giving it another overview. Bowden tubing, hot end, tension, built tension here. Everything's tight. Okay. One Ender 3 V2 built. So in the next video, I'll be doing software, updating firmware, and doing bed level and bed level prints to do testing. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm definitely a fan of the Ender series. They're decent printers for the money. You're getting a decent piece of machinery. I've printed hundreds of hours of printing. When I got my first one, it ran non-stop almost for the first several months. I had so many projects I wanted to do. Some of the prints were over 24 hours. Many times I would set something to print before going to bed, wake up to something that had finished, you know, clean up the bed, set the printer with a new item, and let it run all day again. And then the next night again, and on and on. So you can have a lot of fun. You can make a lot of neat items for the household. It's not necessarily something that's going to pay for itself right away or necessarily ever. This is a hobby. For example, the airplanes are not cost effective. Do not buy a printer trying to print airplanes and save money for RC airplanes. You will spend far more than if you just go buy pre-built foam airplanes. But you'll have a lot of fun doing your own. So it's up to you. I am certainly going to be printing my own 3D plastic airplanes. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.